Hello, welcome to 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. This is lesson number 9, and we are in our second reading of rule number 3. We are beginning with the section with the title Teenage Wasteland. A wasteland is a place with nothing, a desert, usually. Let's read. So he is speaking about the life of teen friends of his and himself, Jordan Peterson, when he was a boy. This was his life and his friends. He says, if we weren't circling around town and countryside, we were at a party. Now remember, we said, let me make sure this is working. We said driving around was called cruising, and he said that their main activity was just cruising the roads, driving aimlessly. But if they weren't cruising around town and countryside, we were at a party. Some relatively young adult or some relatively creepy older adult would open his house to friends. So we have the word open house. Open house is an event where people can come and go freely. If I say, I am having a party, come at 8, then everybody is supposed to come around 8 or between 8 and 9. If I am holding open house, usually it's all day and people can come and go anytime. So, some relatively young adult or relatively creepy older adult, creepy because why would a mature person let kids come and use and destroy their house? Maybe they want something from them. Would open his house to friends. So it isn't the teenager who is doing this. It is some adult. It would then become temporary home to all manner of party crashers, people who are not invited but just come. Many of whom, so party crashers, many of whom started out seriously undesirable or quickly became that way when drinking. So they started out, when they first arrived, they were seriously undesirable. Undesirable as a guest. A person you do not want in your house, you do not desire to have them. Seriously means very much. Seriously undesirable in the beginning, starting out, or they became undesirable when drinking. So they were okay at first, but then if they drank, got drunk, then they might destroy the house. A party might also happen accidentally. So the owner did not plan this. It just happened spontaneously. When some teenagers' unwitting parents, so parents who are clueless, parents who don't know what happens, unwitting parents had left town. In that case, the occupants of the cars or trucks always cruising around would notice the house lights on, but the household car absent. This was not good. This meaning the situation of an accidental party, the situation of parents having left town and then the kids cruising, seeing lights on and coming. This situation was not good. Things could get seriously out of hand. Out of hand means out of control. And seriously, again, means very much so. I did not like teenage parties. Jordan Peterson did not like teenage parties. I do not remember them nostalgically. No fond memories. They were dismal affairs. Affairs are events. Something that happens. Dismal is like a day with no sunshine, raining. It's a sad word, dismal. These parties were sad affairs. The lights were kept low. That kept self-consciousness to a minimum. In other words, the kids weren't thinking of how they looked because the lights were low. The overloud music made conversation impossible. There was little to talk about in any case. Question, what does in any case mean? It means even if there wasn't loud music, there would be nothing to talk about anyway. There were always a couple of the town psychopaths attending. So the town psychopaths attended these parties. Everybody drank and smoked too much. A dreary, and oppressive sense of aimlessness hung over such occasions. The word dreary is similar to the word dismal. Dismal means dark and sad. Dreary means empty. Both of them suggest a grayness with no light, no excitement. Dreary means empty. Hold on, I can fix that. So, a dreary and oppressive sense of aimlessness hung over such occasions, parties like this. Aimlessness, no goals, no purpose, just nothing to do, boredom. And nothing ever happened. Nothing exciting, nothing worthwhile. Unless you count the time my too quiet classmate drunkenly began to brandish his fully loaded 12-gauge shotgun. So the boy's, Jordan's friend, had a gun loaded and he was doing this. That's something that happened. Or the time the girl I later married contemptuously insulted someone while he threatened her with a knife. Jordan Peterson's current wife insulted a boy with contempt while the boy had a knife on her. That's dangerous. Or the time another friend climbed a large tree, swung out on a branch, and crashed flat onto his back, half dead, right beside the campfire we had started at its base, the tree's base. Followed precisely 1 minute later by his half-wit sidekick. Half-wit means stupid, sidekick means friend. So, nothing ever happens at these parties except someone brandishing a gun, or someone threatening you with a knife, or someone almost killing himself by falling out of a tree, followed by another person doing the same thing. So, nothing intelligent happened at these parties. Nothing positive happened at these parties. But sometimes dangerous, stupid things happened. But nothing good. No one knew what the hell they were doing at those parties. When he uses the phrase, what the hell, he is suggesting a level of stupidity. When you come into your house late at night and your father is there angry at you, he will say, "What the hell were you doing?" Or when you do something very stupid and damage the car or damage something, your father might say, "What the hell were you thinking about?" So to use what the hell in this context of a book, he is emphasizing the juvenile, teenage, childish stupidity of being at these parties. The kids didn't know what the hell they were doing there, and it was bad to be there for them. So, no one knew what the hell they were doing at those parties. Hoping for a cheerleader. Cheerleaders are typically the sexy girls, so this would mean hoping to get laid, hoping to have sex. Waiting for Godot. Waiting for Godot is a play, very nihilistic. In this play, two characters are waiting for a third that never comes. That's the whole play. They're waiting and the guy never shows up. Were we waiting for Godot? Although cheerleading squads were, although the former would have been immediately preferred, the former, as we said in an earlier lesson, we have former and latter. Former means the first, so that would be the cheerleader. The former cheerleader would have been preferred, although cheerleading squads were scarce in our town, not many cheerleaders. The latter, meaning waiting for Godot, meaning pointless waiting for nothing, for nobody knows what, was closer to the truth. It would be more romantic, I suppose, to suggest that we would have all jumped at the chance for something more productive. Jumped at the chance for something more productive. Bored out of our skulls as we were. Okay, romantic in this case does not mean boy-girl sexual attraction. Romantic in this context means the kind of thing you read in fictional novels, in books. It would make a good story to say that we teenagers would prefer something more productive since we are bored out of our skulls. But that's not true. Jumped at means, it really literally means desire. If I say I would jump at that, it means I want that. And of course, bored out of our skulls. Skull is the bone of your head, and we say bored out of our skulls when we're very bored. So it would be more romantic, but make a better story, I suppose, to suggest that we would have all jumped at the chance for something more productive. We would have loved that. No. Bored out of our skulls as we were. But it's not true. We were all too prematurely cynical and world-weary and leery of responsibility. Prematurely cynical. Cynical means they cannot see anything hopeful. Everything seems bad. Everything in the world seems bad. So pessimistic. And prematurely cynical, you can understand a person being cynical when they're old and disappointed in life. But when you are young and hopeful and excited and your life is in front of you, you should not be cynical. You should be optimistic and idealistic. But these young people were prematurely old. Even though they were 15 or 16 years old, they had the attitude of a sad, disappointed 65-year-old. So prematurely cynical and world-weary. Usually a person is world-weary when they have been in the world a long time and disappointed. All of these mean disappointed, sad, pessimistic. So again, world-weary and leery of responsibility. Leery means suspicious. Suspicious of responsibility. I don't want to be responsible. I'm not sure I am willing to do anything responsible. So leery means suspicious. Leery of responsibility. So this is the nature of the young people. Prematurely cynical, world-weary, and leery of responsibility. So they were too much this way to stick to the debating clubs and air cadets and school sports that the adults around us tried to organize. So to stick to something means to commit yourself, to join and then keep going, keep participating until the end of the year faithfully. That's what stick to it means. It's a two-word verb, a phrasal verb. So we weren't ready to stick to the debating club. This is a club in school where you learn how to do a formal debate. It's usually for smart kids who are willing to study and research. Air cadets, this will be preparing students to be in the Air Force, in the military, fly planes. School sports, football, baseball, soccer, tennis, ping pong, that the adults around us tried to organize. The fact that he says tried to suggests all of these were a failure. If they were not a failure, he would have said the adults around us organized. So when he says tried to organize, he is telling us that none of the kids wanted to participate in these activities that the adults wanted them to do. Doing anything wasn't cool. Anything is in italics. It is connecting to this idea of sticking to something. To do anything in a faithful way, in an intentional way, wasn't cool. I don't know what teenage life was like before the revolutionaries of the late 1960s advised everyone young to tune in, turn on, and drop out. So in the 1960s, everybody was supposed to, the cool thing to do was tune in, which means listen to the universe. It means follow your instincts. Don't follow rules and regulations and what the platitudes of your parents, the golden rule and the things your parents teach you or religion teaches you. Tune in to the vibrations of the universe. Turn on means take drugs. And drop out means don't go to college, don't get a job, don't do anything traditionally productive. Just exist on drugs. So, Jordan Peterson says, I don't know what teenage life was like before this message came in the 60s. Was it okay for a teenager to belong wholeheartedly to a club in 1955? Was it okay means, was it cool? If you belonged to a club, like debating or sports, did that give you good social status? Did that make you popular? Did you feel like a winner in the 1950s? Because it certainly wasn't okay 20 years later in the 1970s. In the 1970s, in Jordan Peterson's town, you would be too embarrassed to join a club, even if you loved the club. It would be a guilty secret that you would hide that you loved debating or sports or playing a musical instrument. Nothing like that was cool. It wasn't okay. Okay means socially acceptable. Plenty of us turned on, meaning took drugs, and dropped out, meaning did nothing. But not so many of us tuned in, meaning they weren't really hearing any good message from the universe. I wanted to be elsewhere, meaning I wanted to go somewhere else. I wasn't the only one. Everyone who eventually left the Fairview I grew up in, so everybody who left later knew they were leaving by the age of 12. So by the age of 12, if you were destined to get away, you already knew you were leaving. My wife, who grew up with me on the street that our family shared, knew, meaning she knew she was leaving. The friends I had who did and didn't leave also knew. They knew if they were going to stay, they knew if they were going to leave. Regardless of which track they were on, whether to leave or to stay. There was an unspoken expectation in the families of those who were college-bound that such a thing was a matter of course. Such a thing, meaning going to college, was a matter of course, meaning definitely you will do it. Unspoken expectation. Nobody ever said you have to go to college, but in that family it was expected. Of course, everybody goes to college. As a matter of fact, that was how it was in my family. There was never a time when I didn't know I was going to finish college. Even though when I was growing up, only 10% of American youth went to college. And it was mostly men, not females. Yet, in my family, we always knew we were going to college. And it wasn't considered wonderful. It was just like you go to school every day, you go to church on Sundays, you finish high school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids. This is life. So that's my family. We had an unspoken expectation that going to college was a matter of course. Of course. For those from less educated families, a future that included university was simply not part of the conceptual realm. So for them, you grow up, you get married, you have a trade, you earn money, you have kids, you die. For them, college wasn't in their conceptual realm. It wasn't for lack of money either. Tuition for advanced education was very low, and jobs were plentiful and high-paying. So these less educated families, they could have gone to college if they wanted. It just never occurred to them. Just like for you, maybe it never occurs to you that you ought to buy a castle in Ireland. Castles are cheap in Ireland. Who wants to buy a castle in Ireland? Never occurs to you. So, Jordan Peterson, that's Jordan Peterson, earned more money in 1980 working in a mill, a plywood mill. That is a mill that produces wood for building. Than I would, again, doing anything else for 20 years. So Jordan Peterson made more money as a teenager in high school working at the mill than he would for 20 years after he became a psychologist. No one missed out on university because of financial need in oil-rich Alberta in the 70s. Missed out is a two-word verb. These two-word verbs are called phrasals. Phrasal verbs. There are many phrasal verbs in this section last week and this week because Jordan Peterson is writing in an autobiographical mood. Phrasal verbs are usually used in informal speech, and the presence of so many phrasal verbs in this section helps to create the mood of Jordan Peterson just talking to us. Like when he said, "We didn't know what the hell we were doing at parties." That also creates the mood of an informal conversation. So phrasal verbs are typical in informal speech. And they usually involve a action verb like miss, or I'm trying to find another one right here, and then usually a word that looks like a preposition, but it isn't a preposition. It is part of the verb, and the thing that's after is a direct object of the phrasal verb, not an action verb and a prepositional phrase. There are many of those, and I've been underlining them every time we come to them. And with the phrasal verb, the main verb and the preposition thing, the helper, they can be separated, and you can put the object in the middle a lot of times. Or sometimes the helper can be first, they can be separated. So it's not easy to learn these. There's tons of them, lots and lots. You kind of have to pick them up just by listening to speech. It's not easy, and it's not easy to look them up either. But I'll keep pointing them out to you. Maybe you can make a list. Okay. So miss out means to miss an opportunity. Usually with phrasal verbs, there is a single technical word that would work, that means the same as the phrasal verb, and would be used in a formal piece. But in informal speech, we use the phrasal. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next section, talking about some more of his friends and what happened to them. Some different friends and some more of the same. This phrase, more of the same, is a phrase all by itself. When you say, what was it like at the party? I might respond, oh, more of the same. Meaning it's never changes. Some things never change. So more of the same. So some different friends and some which are just like my high school. Okay. In high school, after my first group of cronies had all dropped out, cronies means companions. It has a slightly negative connotation and often is used for old people, not usually used for teenagers. It's appropriate here because his friends were so jaded. They were prematurely cynical and pessimistic and world-weary, just like old people. So this word cronies is rather appropriate. So in high school, after my first group of cronies had all dropped out of school, dropped out of society. By the way, dropped out is a phrasal verb. I made friends. Made friends is a phrasal verb. It means started a relationship with. So I made friends with a couple of newcomers. They came to Fairview as boarders. There was no school after 9th grade in their even more remote and aptly named hometown, Bear Canyon. So these people were boarders, meaning they were teenagers who lived with families in Fairview, because their city of Bear Canyon had no high school. And it was aptly named Bear Canyon. Bear Canyon sounds like a place where bears live. Not civilized, a wilderness. And if something is aptly named, that means the name fits. They were an ambitious duo. So duo is two people, and it was a couple is usually two. although a couple could mean 3 or 4. A couple could mean a few, but a duo is definitely 2. So we're talking 2. They were an ambitious duo. By the way, notice how before any word that starts with a vowel, you must put an N after your So just pointing that out. They were an ambitious duo, comparatively speaking. Comparatively speaking pulls back and reduces the meaning of ambitious. Compared to who? Compared to the other kids in Fairview who are mostly dropouts, you could be ambitious if all you did was stay in school. You don't have to be super ambitious and want to be president or Supreme Court justice. You could just want to graduate and you would be comparatively ambitious compared to the other kids. So comparatively speaking, he is pulling back and reminding you of the context. They were an ambitious duo, comparatively speaking. Straightforward and reliable. Straightforward means they don't hide. They speak what is true. They are what they appear to be. Reliable, you can rely on them. But also cool and very amusing. When I left town to attend Grand Prairie Regional College 90 miles away, one of them was my roommate. So he became friends and college roommates with this kid. The other went off elsewhere to pursue further education. Both were aiming upward. Their decision to do so bolstered mine. Do so refers back to aiming upward. So both of these kids were of the type that knew, remember up here, knew they were going to leave before they were 12, and they had the disposition to aim, to have goals to improve themselves, both of these. And their character strengthened Jordan Peterson's desire to improve himself. I was a happy clam when I arrived at college. We say happy as a clam in English. I found another expanded group of like-minded companions. I underline that because like-minded means people who are like me, who think like me, whom my Bear Canyon comrade also joined. So the expanded group, he also joined. We were all captivated by literature and philosophy. We ran the student union. What this means is they were a powerful force. They were the most famous and popular and visible members of the student union, which is usually the student union is the general building where college students congregate, and also it houses all the student government and student activities. And if they, quote unquote, ran it, to run something means to be in charge, but in this context, it's figurative. They weren't literally in charge, they just were influential. We ran the student union. We made it profitable for the first time in its history, hosting college dances. How can you lose money selling beer to college kids? So they organized dances and made money selling beer. We started a newspaper. We got to know our professors of political science and biology and English in the teeny seminars that characterized even our first year. Seminars means classes. Teeny means 5 or 6 students. And even, it characterized even our first year. Usually, the classes in your first year of college are very large. Hundreds of students, or at least dozens of students, because everybody has to take the same general education classes. But in Prairie College, where he went, even in the first year of college, their classes were very small. So they got to know their professors. The instructors were thankful for our enthusiasm and taught us well. We were building a better life. So everything in this paragraph shows the upward nature of the behavior of Jordan Peterson and his friends. They were all doing all the right things that lead to a better life. I sloughed off a lot of my past. Listen to pronunciation, sloughed off. And it means I shed like the skin of a snake. I just let my old skin fall off and I emerged a new creature. So I sloughed off a lot of my past. Everyone knows, in a small town, everyone knows who you are. You drag your years behind you like a running dog with tin cans tied to its tail. You can't escape who you have been. Everything wasn't online then, and thank God for that, but it was stored equally indelibly in everyone's spoken and unspoken expectations and memory. So the point of all this is the person you are as a teenager determines who everybody expects you to be and what you will tend to do. But if you move, maybe you can shed all that and start new. Remember, Jordan Peterson was cruising aimlessly, drinking, going to aimless parties, and hanging out with dropouts in high school. He needs a new start in college. When you move, everything is up in the air. Up in the air means uncertain and lots of new possibilities. At least for a while. For a while. This period of time is it's usually kind of short, and there's no expectation of exactly how long, but it definitely will end. So you have an indeterminate short period of time. For a while. It's stressful, but in the chaos, there are new possibilities. People, including you, can't hem you in. To hem in something is a phrasal verb. It means to put boundaries around and confine. People can't hem you in, meaning people can't make you be a dropout because you've always been a dropout. People, including you, can't hem you in. So even your own self-image is going to be up in the air. You can change yourself. So people, including you, can't hem you in with their old notions, old ideas. You get shaken out of your rut. A rut, if you are driving in a car or anything, a bicycle, anything where there is a dirt road and the traffic keeps going in one place, it forms a rut. And figuratively, to be in a rut means to be doing the same thing as a habit, even if it's not good for you and you don't like it. You say, I'm in a rut. You can make new, better ruts. This is a joke, by the way. There's no such thing as a better rut. Ruts are bad. Usually, like you never say I'm in a rut for something good. So when he says you can make new ruts, okay, that would be okay. New habits, maybe, that are better. Because a rut is really just a habit. But it's a habit you wish you could break. So you can make new, better ruts with people aiming at better things. I thought this was just a natural development, to go to college, to shed, slough off your old self, to make new goals, and to emerge a more positive person. He thought that was natural, a natural development. I thought every person who moved would have and want the same phoenix-like experience. But that wasn't always the case. So a phoenix is a bird, mythological, that goes up in flames and then reemerges as a new bird from the ashes. Let's see. Wow. We are not even near a stopping place. So we're going to have to end pretty soon, very soon. But we won't make it to the end of a stopping place. Let's see. Let me see where we are. Okay, actually I think we'll stop now because this kind of is a stopping place. He is about to give what we call a counterexample. Counterexample. That would be an example of the opposite of what you expect. So if you say, I expect sunny days, a counterexample would be, don't you remember it rained on Tuesday? Oh yeah. So Jordan Peterson has described just now that when he went off to college with his friend who was an upward person and became roommates with that friend, they both sort of took over the college. To take over is like to run it. They were very successful and they made all the right choices and they improved their lives. And Jordan said, I thought anyone would do that. Just get me out of Fairview and let me live. But next week we will read about what actually happened with some of his friends from Fairview who moved out but didn't move up. So stay tuned.